My dear fathers, brothers, and sisters, and well-wishers in Jesus Christ, I am indeed privileged today to wish you a fruitful as well as excited Advent season as a preparation for welcoming Christ into our hearts as well as giving Christ to all around us. I am here to give a recollection talk on mission building Christian communities. How missionaries need to be involved in building communities. Let me begin with a small story. There was this old lion king which requested the prince king to go around and invite everyone to a meeting. And the young prince asked the old lion king, "How do I invite them?" "Well, it's very easy," said the lion king. "Use your sound to invite them." And the prince set out. After a day or two, returned back. When the day came for the meeting, very few turned up. Surprised, the old lion king asked the prince, "How did you invite them?" And the young lion said, "Well, I invited all of them using their own tones. When I went to the rabbit, I spoke to it like rabbit. When I went to the deer, I invited the deer with the deer's voice, and so on and so forth." And the lion said, "Look, this is the result. When you have to invite for the meeting, you invite with the roar of a lion and not the voice of each animal. Only then will the animals know that you are a lion, and the king is inviting everyone for the meeting." My dear friends, this story should be very simple for us to understand. It invites all of us to know when you are a missionary, you should keep up the identity of a missionary and not be lost among various voices. This invites us to reflect how, as a missionary, I need to keep the community together and build a Christian community around the church, around the parish. It's indeed great to know that when Southwest India province began its missions in Kolar or in North Karnataka or elsewhere, there were very few families existing in those parishes. Maybe some parishes didn't even have Christian presence. But today, when we look back, we have so many families, parishes prospering with very many families. This is because of the hard work as well as the cheerful availability of the missionaries who were pioneering these missions. And this is what is to be reflected today especially. The success of these missionaries were because they were available, cheerful, and dedicated. Thus, we should never lose the identity of a true missionary. And when it comes to missionary life as well as building up Christian communities, Bible itself tells all of us that we must be able to take care of one another. So much so, God asked Cain, "Cain, where is your brother?" And very many verses in the scriptures invite us to take care of one another, whether it is our enemy or a friend. And thus, we need to work towards building Christian community. The defined among missionaries is Jesus Christ himself. He was born poor. He chose to be born poor so that he can begin from the poorest to the last and the least and lost. He was not a shepherd who was lost. He was a shepherd who went after the lost sheep. Come what may, he would give attention to them. So much so, he did not spare even the scribes and Pharisees in his teaching, healing, and preaching ministry. He made even the scribes and Pharisees realize their true depth of spirituality and God's plan for them. And this is what kept the Pharisees attached to Christ. So much so, even scribes and Pharisees at one point became his friends. Here is a missionary who invites all of us to know that the mission of everyone, especially the missionaries, is to keep the community together and then give Christ to every one of them. When we look into another model, St. Francis de Sales, our patron, comes into our picture. A man dedicated so much to the people of God, so much so, he toiled day in and day out to bring back the faithful to Catholic faith. It took long hours for him to copy the doctrines which he explained in simple manner so that the people of Chablais would understand it. Copies after copies had to be written. Moreover, he took life's risk to place them under the doors of each of those families. And what was the result? The Chablais mission turned back to Roman Catholic faith. Not only that, Francis de Sales did not stop with that. Rather, he went ahead in all his availability, even to conduct 40 hours of adoration. Later, as a preacher, he spent enough of time to prepare his sermons. So much so, he would be the best preacher in all of France, for which thousands gathered to listen to him ceaselessly for hours and hours without caring anything. It is because he spent time in preparing his sermons so that he could keep the community bound together. Later, as a bishop, St. Francis de Sales had enough time to write letters to people who required spiritual guidance. So much so, when gathered together, it became a spiritual classical, the introduction to the devout life. He was a true missionary who built Christian communities around him. My dear friends in Jesus Christ, we know the next person in line would be our own founder, who followed closely St. Francis de Sales' methods. He was so passionate to build Christian communities that he did not spare any stone unturned to prepare his sermons, to build up his team, to go from parish to parish, visit houses, preach, teach, and be an exemplary priest to all of them. He was a man for all seasons, a man dedicated to building up communities, especially in a torn nation that was struggling with revolutions. Thus, my dear friends, what are we to do today to build Christian communities? The first thing is to be available cheerfully and commit ourselves as true missionaries, as true followers of Christ. To build Christian communities, the other requirement is to have a pastoral plan. If we don't have a pastoral plan, we have no vision. And when we have no vision, we cannot have any mission. And therefore, we need to have a pastoral plan which will help us first and foremost to know where are our lost sheep and what I need to do for them, and how do I go after them, and how long will it take for me to reach them, catch them, and teach them. And this invites all of us to a further movement in our step, that is visiting of families. Every priest, whether busy in parish or in the institution or in social work, make sure that you are a missionary first, and that invites you to visit families. Understand them, speak to them, counsel them, and give solutions to them. Be an angel to those families. And when you become such pastor, automatically the lost sheep will get attached to you, and then you bring back the lost sheep to the communities. The next important step would be that all of us be honest with people, with accounts, with whatever undertakings we do. When we are honest, people can notice us and read our honesty in and through our works and words. And the next step would be that we be hospitable to every soul. I'm sure none of us are perfect, and so also are people. People are not perfect. At the same time, they expect us to be hospitable to them in terms of spiritual life, in terms of sacraments, in terms of forgiving them to the extent that they come in search of Christ and the church. Another important aspect in this regard would be that we give due importance to our sermons. For people expect a lot from the Word of God and its explanation by us. When we spend sufficient time in meditation and prayer, this would help us to preach well, which will keep the flock together, attracted towards Christ. Very many of them thirst for Word of God, and it is our duty to give that Word of God in the best manner possible. And another important aspect of building Christian community would be to give utmost importance to children and the youth, for they are the future of the church. Very many priests at times neglect this aspect, especially catechizing them, being with them, accompanying them, and helping them grow in the right way towards right spirituality. This would keep the future church safe, the future church spiritual, bonded to Christ. Moreover, stop speaking ill of one another. and ill of the families that are under your fold. Make sure you do not encourage others too to speak ill of other families or other persons. This is important because that will divide the parish or the Christian community into smaller fragments to an extent where we will no longer be able to join them with any glue possible. And finally, make sure you use all possible resources, ways and means to keep and build these Christian communities together. Let me give you an example. The early church never had internet or WhatsApp or Instagram or anything of this sort. Still, they used the earliest technology available. Those were the Roman roads that were built. They used them extensively, and later very many other things were included, especially writing stencils and distributing them, going at the marketplaces and preaching aloud, getting into families and bonding them together in times of difficulties. Today we are blessed with much better technology, and at times we are lost in the technology. We are always worried to connect ourselves to the internet rather than connect ourselves to the people of God around us. Let us connect ourselves to the people of God and not to the internet signals. That will help us to build our communities stronger. Dear fathers, brothers, and well-wishers, I have not presented you here any church documents to substantiate the topic building Christian communities as missionaries. Rather, I have tried to give you practical ways and means to build Christian communities around the altar of the Lord. Hence, I take this opportunity to wish you all a wonderful, joyful, grace-filled Christmas and a healthy new year, so that all of us will be safe, sound, and prosperous. May God be praised. May God bless all of us. Happy Christmas, Happy New Year 2022.
Thank you.